Hey everybody, Dr. Dave Marquis here, and I wanted to talk to you about how to clean things up. In a past video, I was talking about things that the body can acquire over time, and many individuals wrote back asking, well, what do I do about that? Once I find that my body's toxic for whatever reason, how do I deal with that? So it's a very valid question, and it's not always going to be a linear answer, because one of the first things that you have to know when you're looking at cleaning up a mess in the body is, what kind of patient am I working with? And you can ask that about yourself, because sometimes the environment that you're wanting to clean might not be ready for the type of cleaning that you're hoping to apply. And so, in other words, not all cleaning agents are equally applicable to all human beings. Having said that, I did want to give you some ideas of things that you could do safely to help to make the body less toxic and to remove things that you might not want lodged in your system. And there's a term that's commonly used around that concept called chelation. And I've been involved in the world of chelation for much of my career, so multiple decades. And I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of that. And yes, there is an ugly side to that. And that's when you apply chelation principles to an individual that's just not ready to pull waste out. So you really do need to use caution when you're diving into that concept of chelation. And I would strongly advise you to seek out the counsel and guidance from a knowledgeable practitioner, whether that be your personal physician or you find yourself a functional medicine practitioner that does that. But don't feel like you have to go that alone, because there's a lot of good information out there and there's a lot of good practitioners that do guide people in that. So that's all my preface. Diving in now. There's common things that people can do to help their body detoxify on a daily basis. One of the simplest things that you can do is just adding fiber to your diet. Soluble fiber is indispensable in the human diet because we've got this tube that goes about 28 feet from stem to stern. And that tube really relies on many of the things that we stick in it to help it do its job. And soluble fibers are really high on that list. Sometimes I'll have people come in and they'll tell me that they're taking XYZ fiber, and I'll realize that, okay, most of what they're taking is insoluble. And insoluble fiber has a place. It certainly adds for bulking and allows for the stool to move through at a faster pace, but it doesn't necessarily have the capacity to adsorb. Adsorption is the concept of sticking something onto something else and that something holds it. Well, there's many things that we can put into our body that do adsorb. So in the soluble fiber realm, you can have like apple pectins, oat bran, arabinogalactin, inulin, artichoke. It goes on and on. There's a lot of different things in the plant kingdom that do that job for us. We just don't eat enough of them. So sometimes and prunes. Sometimes you just need to get these things in concentrated form so that the body can pull it through. Well, there's things in the next level that can do that are also in the natural realm, using things like chlorella, using things like charcoal. Charcoal is a wonderful binding agent, very safe to use. And then you can get into some of the rare earth minerals. I love these things. So like humic and fulvic acid, zeolite, getting into some of these rare earth minerals, now you actually open up a whole nother window of capacity for binding and removing waste from the body, while simultaneously enhancing or upregulating some of your detox pathways. That's one of the things that I love about these rare earth things. So like the zeolite, the humic, and the fulvic acid, those actually support your mitochondria. So they help the body to make more ATP. Think energy, fuel for the body. Many of these things can be taken orally. Some of them can be done suppositorily, and I recommend looking at both of those avenues. The aspect of looking at different body regions and toxicity is another topic that I'm going to touch on briefly. One of the biggest risks of doing IV chelation that I personally have seen with patients in clinic is that you might be pulling things that can't be removed right now. That person's body is just not ready for it. And so you can actually, when you're doing things like EDTA via IV or DMSA, sometimes we'll see individuals have a decline because it creates more inflammation in the brain during the process. So that's something that I really encourage people to, if they're even considering that, it has to be done under the guidance of a physician, and it has to be done carefully. Cardiovascularly, there's a lot of things that we can work on to help the body to reduce inflammation in those vessels. This is where I really love some of the suppository protocols and some of the enzymes that I've talked about in other videos. So I love the use of like lumbrokinase and serrapeptidase, and there's blends that are out there. Fibrenza is one of my personal favorites that we use commonly here in the office. And that one helps to denature some of the things that have built up in the vessels. And then you can safely use some of the suppository chelators. So like there's a dicalcium EDTA that you can use in a suppository form made by metacardium. And that actually pulls the things that the enzymes are denaturing. So we've seen pretty predictably individuals reduce their calcium scores in their heart vessels, and we've seen the same thing in the peripheral arteries and vessels of removing inflammation and plaquing. So I know it can be done because I've seen it with my own eyes. And I know that as people apply these principles appropriately, first they identify their inflammation, they reduce the intake and exposure of those things that are inflaming them, and then they apply in a safe manner some of these things that you can use nutraceutically to help to break down some of the inflammatory products in the body, bind and remove them. You can move mountains in the body, but it has to be done slowly. That was a mouthful. It was just like a fire hose. I threw that out at you. So I hope that you can watch this a couple of times and understand that, there are a lot of ways that you can address toxicity in the body. These are just some of those. I said fiber as kind of a staple. Hydration, I should have thrown that right with it, because water is just a gift, and clean water is even a higher priority. Avoiding getting lots of water in plastic bottles, that's huge because of all the toxins that come with it. So make sure that you're hydrating appropriately, appropriate minerals, appropriate fiber, that's the staple, and then step into some of these other things as may be needed. I hope that's helpful to you. Have a great day.